If you've been a reader of Notes from the Field for any length of time, you've probably realized that I spend a lot of time at farms, primarily here in Chile. I'm not on any one of the farms today. I'm actually in our brand new office, high up in one of the tallest buildings here in South America in Santiago, Chile. But I do spend a lot of time on farms. I'm probably in Chile 5, 6 months out of the year. The other half of the year, I travel to 40 some odd countries every year, and I spend about half the year here in Chile. We've got a very large agricultural project. We're managing over 5,000 acres of productive land, and it's really exciting. And the thing that I enjoy so much about spending so much time out there on farms and farmland is just that sense of life. There's all that nature. It's really so incredible. It's exciting to see, to see. I mean, even plants, they're living, breathing creatures. They really are. They're alive. And they start from just the tiniest seed that you put in the dirt, and days, weeks go by sometimes, and they sprout. Life comes from this tiny little seed that you stick in the ground. You cover it with dirt, and life comes out of that. And with a little bit of care and maintenance, a little bit of water and some sunshine and so forth, it grows and it grows and it grows. And it's so exciting to see. And then it eventually becomes, a little sapling, a plant, a seedling, becomes an entire tree that for years and years, decades, even up to 100 years, produces fruits and nuts and all these things. And that, to me, is absolutely miraculous. We see that we see these kinds of things. I have the privilege of being able to see this sort of thing almost every day. And not just with plants, with animals as well. We just actually had a couple of new kittens were born. That was unexpected, but really amazing to see. I mean, with cats, the gestation period is about 2 months. I think we actually one of our team members had actually happened to be present at the time of when the cats did their business, and from that day to the day that the kittens came out was 2 months. And 2 months, again, from an egg and a sperm cell become this living, breathing creature in 2 months. They're walking, kind of stumbling around, but they're eating and they're growing and getting fat and all these things. And in 2 months, it's absolutely incredible to see that sort of thing. We see this again. We see this all the time. We see these chickens, and they lay their eggs, and inside of 28 days. The eggs hatch, and they're in 28 days, in a month, they're these little tiny living, breathing creatures that are walking around and following their mommies, hunting and pecking and scratching. And it's an amazing thing to see so much life. Absolutely incredible. Plant life, animal life. And to me, it's all amazing to just watch this process. In agriculture, I mean, but plants, every single plant is like a factory. It's its own, it's its own system of creating something out of absolutely nothing, from a little seed from sunlight. It's the most amazing power to be able to see that over and over again every day. And something interesting happened recently. We have literally millions of plants and a lot of animals at 3 farms over 5,000 acres. We've got deer and cattle and all these things, horses, chickens, and sheep. And we brought them some new chickens recently, and something interesting happened. It turns out that these chickens had been, caged chickens their entire lives. They were all adult hens, egg-laying hens, and they've been caged up their entire lives. And when chickens get caged, I don't know if you've ever seen this before. It's horrible. It's disgusting. They're these little tiny cages. They can barely fit inside of them. And all they can really do is just squat, and they just sit there and lay eggs, and somebody comes along, once a day and feeds them some special kind of chemical diet, and they plop out a bunch of eggs, and that's what you eat. That's what most of the eggs, when you go to the grocery store, that's basically where they come from. It's disgusting. And then the yolk is this sort of snot colored thing. And I mean, it's just not natural. It's really not natural. And we keep everything. It's free range in the true sense. I mean, there's thousands of acres, chickens running around thousands of acres that, they hunting and pecking and scratching and, eating, the fruit falls off the trees and the worms and the insects eat the fruit and the chickens eat the insects. And sometimes they attack our strawberries a little bit too much and that's annoying, but it's true free range. It's actually rather unfortunate because even the term free range eggs, that's kind of been taken and bastardized quite a bit because now they sell stuff as free range if a chicken's got like 10 square feet, they're still basically in a cage. It just happens to be a slightly larger cage. And now they call that free range and it's not. I mean, in this sense, they're true free range. They just have their run of the place, to go around and find as much food as they possibly can. And I tend to indulge them a little bit. And, they've got several chicken houses and things like that. Where they enjoy their time. But this interesting thing happened is we bought some new chickens. Again, these chickens were all, the ones that we bought were all, they all came from cages. And we brought them to the farm, one of the farms, and kind of took them to the chicken house there so they get sort of acclimated and whatever chicken socializing has to be done. And they all kind of, they ran into one of these little areas where sometimes the hens that are, when they want some privacy to just sort of sit on their eggs in a little area by themselves so they don't be bothered. That, sometimes the hens that are sitting on their eggs, they go off in the corner, and that's where all these chickens went. They just sort of stayed there, inside this little holding area, so to speak, and they just wouldn't go outside, even though there were, dozens, 100, 150 other chickens running around outside, their peers running around, scratching and pecking and just sort of enjoying their days, doing what chickens do. These new ones, they just sat sort of cowered in the corner and they wouldn't leave. And then we actually would have to, pick them up and take them and say, no, here, take them to the orchard, take them to the woods, take them to the fields so they could get a sense of it. And they just kept running back over and over again. They just kept running back. They had no concept of what it was like to be out there, in the world. They had no concept of what it was like to be able to walk around on their own and do things that were natural. They didn't have any concept of that because they had spent their entire lives in a cage. Maybe to the point that they actually kind of liked it, or at least got so used to it that was the only reality they ever knew. It made me realize that in a weird way, human beings might not really be so different. People like chickens might actually have their own cages. And yeah, maybe it's a very nice cage. It's a cage that has a lot of Starbucks and Bed Bath and Beyonds and wide boulevards and clean streets and these sorts of things. Whatever, it might be a nice cage, but in many respects, it's still a cage. See, the thing is that we're all born free. Everybody's born free. Not only human beings, but animals as well. Even plants are all born free. Nobody comes into this world with an obligation to pay off government debt that they didn't have anything to do with, to work their entire lives just so they could pay down some level of interest on a debt that previous generations of idiotic politicians racked up. Nobody comes into this world with an obligation to pay that stuff off. Nobody comes into this world needing to be told what they can and cannot put in their own bodies or how they're allowed to raise their own children or any of these sorts of things. Nobody comes into this world with any of these things. And yet it happens. See, we're born free, and yet we have to learn how to be unfree. Just like these chickens. When these chickens came into this world, they were, they're just little chicks. They didn't have anything, didn't know anything. They had no obligations. They were kind of taken and put into captivity and grew up in these cages, and that became their reality. They learned that was their reality. Their reality was defined for them, and it eventually became the norm. That was a learning process for them. They had to learn how to become unfree until eventually that became the norm. And it's just the same thing for us. We have to learn how to subordinate ourselves to authorities. And eventually we do that to the point that it becomes the norm. It's normal now for us to be told what we can and cannot put in our own bodies. It becomes normal to be told how to raise our own children, and that our children can even be taken away from us by the state if the state in its own discretion decides that, you're not raising your children in the right way. Because you had the audacity to take them out into the wilderness, or I did a podcast with a sweet lady in Florida who got hauled off because, she had the audacity to disconnect from the grid, because she wanted to live off grid, and they decided that wasn't okay. Or like, the guy who gets arrested for collecting rainwater that falls on his own property, his own private property, and these sorts of things. When little girls get chased away for running lemonade stands, or teenagers who have to deal with Homeland Security because they go door to door offering, their neighbors to shovel their snow. That's not free. But it's become the norm. It's become the norm to go into an airport and stand there and raise your hands in the I surrender pose and to go through a body scanner. It's not normal. It's not natural, but it's become the thing that is our learned reality. We have learned very well how to become unfree. And we're actually we're fantastic learners. When it comes to how to be unfree, we're amazing learners. We learn so quickly, and we adopt all these habits. And that's really what it is. To be unfree is a habit. It's a really bad habit. It's a horrible habit. It's one of the worst habits there is, but it's a habit. And just like anything else, it could be unlearned. We're actually pleased that after it took 2.5 weeks probably, since we brought these chickens onto the farm, but they're finally now out there kind of relearning, remembering, rekindling that instinct inside of them of what it's like to be free. Because again, being free is natural. It's one of the most natural human states there is. It's like love, to love and to be loved. It's one of the most natural human states there is. And one of the things that I actually learned is that even the word free, in English, which is derived from German and goes back to the Indo-European language family, is ultimately derived from ancient Sanskrit. And the ancient Sanskrit word meant simultaneously both free and love. It was the same word to describe two of the most basic, carnal, natural human states that exist: to be free, to love, to be loved. And it wasn't until High German thousands of years ago that the two words kind of separated, and there was love and beloved and so forth, and then there was free and freedom, and they became different. But ultimately, they're derived from the exact same thing. And I found that to be so interesting because again, they're the same. They're so similar in that they're the same basic state of humanity. It's so natural to be free. It's unnatural to be unfree. And that's ultimately what I would say personal sovereignty is all about. To be a sovereign man, and look, I don't want to offend anybody. Just for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to use the single gender here, but this applies to anybody, male, female, etc. Look, this is what it's all about. Personal sovereignty, to be a sovereign man, is all about achieving more freedom. The unfortunate thing is that this word sovereignty, it's almost become a bit of a dirty word, and I'm sick and tired of that. The word sovereign, just like we were talking about, this idea of free range, and now that's it's kind of been bastardized and destroyed. The concept of what it is, sovereignty as well. Sovereignty is about freedom. Freedom is a natural state of human beings, of all living creatures. And yet, the idea of sovereignty, even the word has been absconded, it's been taken and stolen and destroyed now. The word has almost become a dirty word. There's a group of people, who go around and take, have taken some things to an extreme and have gone and, shot police officers and engaged in violence and so forth. And now there's this group of people who use the word sovereign and sovereignty, so forth, that are labeled as terrorists and all these sorts of things. And now you can't even say the word anymore. You say sovereign and people think, oh, okay, well, he's a wacko terrorist. No, sovereignty, we're talking about personal sovereignty. It's personal freedom. Freedom is just becoming more free, is just becoming more human. It's becoming more natural. It's reaching our most natural state. There can't be anything better than that. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing ugly or criminal or terrible or terroristic about any of these things. We're talking about achieving our most natural state. That's what it is to be free. To be free is ultimately, and when you think about what does that really mean, freedom is all about choice. That's what personal sovereignty is. It's about taking the choice back instead of being told exactly what to do and not do, and what you can and cannot put in your body, and how to raise your own children, and having a litany of regulations so vast that it fills an entire football stadium. That at any given moment, including right now, you're guilty of all kinds of crimes that you've never even heard of. And personal sovereignty is about taking that back, taking back that choice, taking back that power. I would actually view a movement towards personal sovereignty, to become a sovereign man, is the modern day equivalent of like being a Renaissance man hundreds of years ago, when it was all about, personal growth, about becoming a better person, becoming more well-rounded, mastering multiple subjects and languages and studies and industries and all these things all together. And there were people that did that really changed the world. I think that personal sovereignty, freedom, becoming a sovereign man is that modern day equivalent of becoming a Renaissance man or a Renaissance woman. And what does that really mean? I mean, to me, it's so many things, but again, it's ultimately about being in control of your own fate, the power to choose, the freedom to choose. And this is, to me, one of the most important things that there is, because I think about this a lot. I have some of these moments sometimes, I'm standing out, in some vast, couple thousand acres somewhere in southern Chile, or even just walking into this building this morning, standing here high up above the city, here in South America, or, a lot of the places that I go and things that I've seen and people that I've been fortunate enough to spend time with. And, sometimes I have these reflections. I wonder, what was that path that, where I started, someplace, a kid who grew up in the suburbs in Texas, and, where I'm at now, and how did that happen? And when I kind of look at it, it was a series of deliberate choices. And I think that's what life is fundamentally about, is, this choices that we all make, or sometimes not make. And one of the things that I've noticed is that it's commonplace, I think, for a lot of folks to abdicate choice, abdicate the decisions. And in many respects, because there's so many forces against us, a lot of inertia and so many forces pushing against us, trying to pigeonhole us into specific situations and kind of make decisions for us. And it's natural, it's sort of normal to want to follow the path of least resistance. And in many respects, we end up in realities that we don't define ourselves, but realities that get defined for us. We're now, as life being a series of choices over time, where instead of we defining our own choices, we become defined by choices that we don't make. We become defined by choices that other people make for us. And to me, one of the primary principles in becoming more free is taking back that control of making our own decisions. There's so many forces that are working against us. Again, we've got central bankers who are unelected who sit around in committee rooms and decide how much, the value and purchasing power of our currency is going to be worth. We have governments and politicians at federal, state, provincial, local, county, all different levels that tell us all of these things and rules and regulations, every last little thing, when you can water the grass and when you can drive and what permit you have to start your business and all the 10,000 things that you want to do if you want to start this or do that or get involved in this and all these things, and most of which you don't even know. You'll never know. You'll only find out about it when it turns out, you've been in violation of the XYZ rule, or you didn't file form, BS 822. So now you've got a $10,000 fine on you and all these things. But even with forces like that against us, I think in many respects, we can be our own worst enemy. Human beings can create mentally an enemy that's so great it exceeds, supersedes all the other forces that are working against us on the outside. We have this lifetime steady propaganda telling us to subordinate ourselves to the state, and we have to, do all these things. We have to give up our labor and our worth and all these things, for the greater good and all this nonsense. And so many lies, and yet the things that we tell ourselves, in many respects, are even the greater obstacles. There are so many solutions that are out there and things that can actually help us and improve our lives and make us more free. And yet we tell ourselves we're the ones who constrain ourselves. We're the ones who prevent ourselves from taking action. It is that inertia. It's one of the most powerful forces in the world. Isaac Newton told us about inertia, that an object at rest will tend to stay at rest. We will prevent ourselves from taking action. We create our own inertia. And I believe that that's one of the most important elements in becoming more free, is to overcome that inertia. Becoming free, just like being unfree, is learned. And you can learn once again, you can get back in the habit of becoming more free. And in many respects, it starts with a state of mind, a change, a mental change, to change the way you view things, change your thinking on these things. And it's just all about going back to nature, going back to the basic element in which, in the world that we were all born in, free. And it's just a state of mind. It's a decision. To become free is a decision that has to be backed up by action. That's like anything else. It's like losing weight. You don't just get to decide, I want to lose weight. You don't lose weight because you buy a diet book. Losing weight, is, being healthy and so forth. It's not rocket science. It's a decision. It's a series of decisions backed up by actions. I had a friend, my friends over at the Real Estate Guys Radio, one of the guys, Russ, I remember I saw him. I hadn't seen him in a couple of months. And this guy he looked chiseled. He looked fit. He looked great. I said, wow, what have you been doing? And Russ told me, he said, every day, when I sat down, or if I had a meal or something like that, I just made different decisions. I made healthier decisions instead of unhealthy decisions. Instead of fried chicken, I had grilled chicken. Instead of French fries, I had a salad. It's not rocket science. And yet the summation, the aggregate sum of all these little decisions over time had a major impact. It had a major impact on his weight and his health and so forth. And it was an incredible change. It wasn't enough to just decide one time, say, I want to lose weight, or I want to be rich, or I want to be this, or I want to do that, and I want to be I want to be a great basketball player, whatever it is. It's not enough to just say that. It's not enough to just change your mind, say, this is what I'm going to do. It has to be backed up by action. It starts with the choice, and that choice is backed up by action. A lot of times they're just little actions. These little actions become habit. And that's really what freedom is. It's habit. It's choice. It's action along the lines of this direction, with a change in the way that you think, in this mental thinking, instead of saying, well, there's nothing I can do, and my reality is to be controlled and influenced by all these things. No, it's not. The reality can be whatever you define it to be. You're in control. That's the primary tenet. That's the core principle. You're in control of your own fate. You choose. It's that power to choose, and not to be defined by choices that you don't make, not to be defined by choices that others make for you, but to make your own decisions. Now, one of the other things along these lines is it's very difficult to have choice if you don't have options. And as freedom is very much about choice, and choice does require options, in many respects, you do need to create options for yourself. And that's absolutely, that's completely and totally realistic. And we talk about these things from time to time, and it's not really just about, this whole idea of, of doing things abroad and international and so forth, but just as an example, I'll just give you an example. Say, look, we talk about the banking system a lot. Banking in the West in general, in Europe, in the United States, there's simply a lot of risk. There is rather unfortunate to say, but there is some fraud risk. There's depending on where you are, there's varying degrees of solvency risk where, banks might not even really have the money anymore. And then there's liquidity risk. And these are real risks that are out there in the banking system. And you have to look at it and say, even when the Federal Reserve, when the FDIC, when they have, when they make statements talking about unsound banking practices and so forth, this isn't some wild and crazy conspiracy theory. This isn't Simon Black, saying, oh, the banks are unsound banking practices. This is the Federal Reserve. This is the FDIC saying this stuff. And so when the reality is that obvious, again, a rational person would say, okay, maybe these banks aren't as safe as they claim to be. Again, it's that steady propaganda for your entire life. You've been told banks are safe, keep your money there. Banks are safe, keep your money there. No, they're not. All the objective data says that they're not. The analysis of the Fed itself, of the FDIC itself, of the regulating authorities themselves say, hey, there's a lot of risk here. All the data comes to this obvious conclusion. And so why would a rational person say, hey, well, I'm just going to continue to keep 100% of my savings there? It doesn't make any sense. So part of being free is saying, you know what, I'm going to make a choice. I'm going to make a choice to move my money somewhere else where it's not so unsafe, where I don't have to take on so much risk, where, bankers are taking my money and gambling away on something that's stupid or loaning it to a bankrupt government. Or all kinds of just idiotic things. I'm going to do something that makes me feel safer. I'm going to make a choice to do that. Well, you can't choose to do that unless you have another option. Because if you have no other option, then what are you going to do with your money? If you only have one option, then you've got one option. So the whole idea is to create other options. There's so many other different examples we could get into over and over again. We talk about this thing again on kind of an international scale. We talk about having more options. We talk about this with passports and residencies and things like that. If you have your entire life tied up in one citizenship, one nationality, one thing goes wrong in that place, you have all of your eggs in one basket. It makes sense to have other options. That's what second citizenships and all these things are about, having other options, right? And so, but nobody's just going to hand it to you. Takes a little bit of work to create another option. But, it's not that hard. A lot of people are descended from ancestors from Poland and Italy and all these different places. You might find different nationalities in your family tree. You can go out and obtain residency very easily in a very cost-effective way in a number of different places around the world. And now you've just created another option. We talk about this all the time with retirement schemes. If you're in the land of the free, we talk about this with Social Security. We've talked about this, I think, just last week. This isn't Simon Black saying Social Security is broke. The Treasury Secretary of the United States of America, the Secretary of Health and Human Services of the United States of America, the Secretary of Labor of the United States of America signed their name to a report that says that Social Security is going to run out of money. It's nearly about out of money. The Disability Insurance Trust Fund, by the way, of Social Security runs out of money in a matter of weeks. This isn't something that goes out 15, 20 years in the future. This is a matter of weeks that we're talking about, and it's about to run out of money. What's the plan? They don't have a plan. There's no plan. There's no plan. It's about to run out of money. And so again, you have to look at that and say, wow, the fund, all this, you're going to spend your entire, especially if you're a young person, oh my God, you're going to spend your entire life paying into this system. And when it comes time for you to get paid, it's not going to be there. You've been promised something now for your entire life. And then eventually they're going to default on that promise. It's called theft. It's called theft, right? Now, a free person would have another option. You can create other options. You can choose a different lifestyle where you're not paying into that system. And by the way, it's perfectly legal. It's completely and totally legal to make different decisions that take you in a different career path where you don't have to pay into that system. And instead, you can divert, money into, to your own pool of savings to save for your own retirement, or save for retirement a different way. Do something entirely different. Create your own choices. Define your own reality. You have the power to do that as long as you change your state of mind to say, you know what? I can choose. There are options. There are solutions. And there are. For all these things, for all these problems, there are solutions. There are a lot of solutions. And that's the greatest thing, when I'm wandering around at all these farms, I see plants, I see animals, I see all these things, and it's human beings that possess the incredible capability of reason. We solve problems. Human beings solve problems. Anytime there's a problem, we're able to adapt and overcome and create a solution. And that's what makes it so exciting, because all these problems are nothing more than opportunities in disguise. We have the ability to become more free. We can relearn what it is to become more free, which is simply just another way of saying to become more human, to go back to our natural state, to become happier and healthier. And by the way, that's a huge part of it. We're talking about freedom. To be free also means to be healthy physically, medically, financially, emotionally, all these things. That's a huge part of it. And when we have that ability with all this, and it starts with that choice, it starts with that mental decision and a little bit of action, creating our own options. And a lot of that, in many respects, is derived from education, real education, not some state-funded, state-supported curriculum, out there. I mean, I know there's a lot of really brilliant, amazing teachers. I had several of them. But at the end of the day, the state is there. State education is there to teach you how to subordinate yourself to authority, how to be a good little citizen. They're not there to teach you how to become successful, how to make money, how to manage money, how to start a business, how to do all these things. They're never going to teach you that in an education system. They're not going to teach you anything that really counts, that really matters. They're going to teach you what they think that you need to know in order to become a good, dutiful, tax serf. Just like the medieval serfs from long ago, that's the goal, is to put you in a system where they can milk you, until your end of days. And then when it comes time for you to pull money out of the system that you paid into for your entire life, oh, well, sorry, it's not there for you anymore. That's not freedom. Freedom is about choice. And when there's no choice, if you have no choice, then you're not free. So the entire idea is to change that mental state and realize that you do have choice. You do have options. And if you don't know what they are, then it's just simply a function of education. It's about learning, real knowledge. To me, this is what it ultimately is to be free. This is what it is to achieve freedom, liberty, personal sovereignty, to become a sovereign man. And I'll close with a great poem you may know, by William Ernest Henley. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I think whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I've not winced nor cried aloud under the bludgeonings of chance. My head is bloody but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how strait the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. That is, to me, absolutely what it is all about. Freedom, sovereignty, to be a sovereign man, sovereign woman. And I want to thank you very much for listening today. We'll talk to you again soon.